CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
And it appears the copycats have begun doing their thing. 4 BC schools were locked down today after threats were made. An inner-city Vancouver school, Thunderbird Elementary, locked down after a threat was made this morning. In northern BC, 2 elementary schools and a high school locked down in the town of New Hazelton. No one was hurt in any of the instances, but police and school officials are taking no chances. One of the report's key recommendations is that the province appoint a champion to provide advice to government as it implements the report's other recommendations. And former Lieutenant Governor Stephen Point has been selected for that role. Point will lead an advisory committee on the safety and the security of vulnerable women. Justice Minister Shirley Bond provided the government's response to the Opal report, expressing regret that what happened in the Picton case could not be undone.
That fact, for me as a mother, a sister, and a grandmother, and as someone who wants to lead real change, has been the most difficult part of reviewing this report.
The Justice Minister says over the next few months, government will thoroughly examine the report and welcomes input from groups directly affected by the recommendations. Those include the families of the missing and murdered women, the Vancouver Police Department, RCMP, and City of Vancouver. The NDP's Justice critic says this response is a little too late.
Because the government refused to fund groups that Commissioner Opal said should have standing, that has meant that many people do not feel that their voices were heard when they needed to be heard and should have been heard, and indeed, if were heard, may have produced a far better report than we have. Serious study.
Krogh says Opal's report does little to address the issues of systemic racism and sexism, and the Justice critic believes that police departments across the province need to do more to hire officers that reflect the communities they serve.
No British Columbians today can take pride in what this report reveals about our society. The police forces involved, I would hope, have learned a very serious and sad lesson. I don't think as we approach Christmas that any of us can't be moved by what the report says about our community, about our society, and about the responsibilities that are given to police forces, which they clearly, in this case, failed to meet, just as we as a society failed to meet.
The opposition says it will conduct a thorough review of the report, but stop short of committing to a further missing women inquiry should the NDP form government after the election next May. A Vancouver Island family is hoping the one-year anniversary of their son's disappearance will spark somebody's memory and help them to bring him home. 26-year-old Matthew Huzar was working as a geologist in Vancouver when he disappeared. He was last seen December 16th of last year, leaving a Christmas staff party at a downtown Vancouver pub. He was supposed to come home to his family in Souk the following day, but since then, there has been no trace.
We've run all the scenarios through our mind as to what might have happened that night, and none of them really make sense. And basically, we won't give up hope that he is still out there somewhere until we find out otherwise.
Matthew's family says he didn't have any mental health issues or substance abuse issues. He had a steady girlfriend and had just bought himself a sailboat and was happy at work. If you know anything about the disappearance of Matthew Huzar, you're asked to contact your local police department or Crime Stoppers. An early morning brawl led to a man and woman getting pepper sprayed in their own home today. Shortly after 6 o'clock this morning, 3 people wearing masks broke into a suite on Gorge Road East where a fight had broken out, and 2 of the victims were sprayed. The assailants fled on foot. As the victims called police, Vic PD got to the scene, caught up with one of the suspects nearby. He had suffered minor injuries, head injuries from the brawl, and was taken to the hospital. But police say this was a targeted attack and think the dispute was probably about drugs.
We're investigating currently now. It's been passed on to the detectives to identify the other 2 suspects. But we do know now that the suspects and victims knew each other and were associated.
The suspect in custody was set to appear in court this afternoon to face charges of break and enter and possibly others. The 2 victims were treated for minor injuries from the pepper spray. Meantime, Vic PD is searching for a man who robbed a woman at gunpoint this afternoon at a bank near the Hillside Shopping Centre.
This is obviously a great concern for us in the city here, and they're investigating it as quickly and efficiently as they can to make an identification of the suspect.
Police say the man was wearing gloves and a mask and was carrying a firearm when he entered the Van City branch near Scott Street, demanded the woman hand over her wallet. The bank was closed at the time, and the woman was at the ATM. She handed over her money when she saw a gun, and the suspect fled on foot. He's described as 5'9" with a medium build, wearing blue jeans and a blue hoodie. If you have information or you witnessed the crime, you're asked to contact Victoria Police. Well, if you're traveling to the interior of British Columbia over the Christmas holidays, make sure that you and your vehicle are prepared for winter, because conditions are poor on mountain passes right now with a lot of snow. 35 centimeters expected on the Coquihalla tonight. And weather may have been a factor in a crash on the Coquihalla Highway early this morning. A Greyhound bus with 42 passengers on board, traveling from Vancouver to Prince George, skidded off the highway and rolled onto its side north of Merritt. It was trying to avoid a broken-down vehicle when it crashed. Passengers had to be pulled through the windshield, but only one person was hurt. North Shore Rescue and West Vancouver police are searching for a missing snowboarder on Cypress Mountain. He went out of bounds on Sunday. Authorities do know the area where the man is trapped, but it's difficult terrain and the avalanche rating is high. The snowboarder was not injured. He was texting back and forth with rescue crews before his cell phone battery died. The search was underway today as more snow was falling on the mountain. Parts of Stanley Park had to be closed off to the public after high winds and high tide, considered too dangerous, were crashing onto the seawall. And sections of West Vancouver's seawall were flooded as well. Some of the seawall in Stanley Park closed as a safety precaution as well. A proposal for development in central Saanich has been taken off the drawing boards. The Sartlip First Nation and Peninsula Co-op are calling it quits. Co-op and the First Nation had partnered with plans to build a grocery store, gas bar and retail center, but many of the people living in the area strongly opposed the plan. They say the property should be kept as farmland. Peninsula Co-op filed a civil suit against a group of people in April of last year, accusing them of conspiracy and trying to delay the development. The District of Central Saanich was going to amend a zoning bylaw for the two parties to move ahead with it, but the CRD rejected it, saying it was outside of the area allowed by municipal plan and regional growth strategy. An announcement today, terse and brief, was that the plan is now no longer being moved forward on. Well, Vancouver Island University is being recognized for its efforts to reduce poverty on an international scale, though through a project it is launching in Ukraine. VIU will help develop a new educational program supported by the Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA, to improve infrastructure overseas. The goal of the project is to help with registration and management of land, forest, and water resources in Ukraine.
Our job now is going to be to actually write those 6 courses, so we'll develop those in English, and then when the courses get translated into Ukrainian, our role is going to be a bit more on the mentorship side.
Canadians have a responsibility to help developing nations, but we want to make sure that the efforts we're making actually produce results and contribute to a more stable society.
VIU took on a similar project in Lithuania in 2007, and since it was a success, the university decided it wanted to do more. The Canadian International Development Agency is giving VIU more than $780,000 toward the project. Adam has the night off tonight, but briefly in entertainment news, longtime Canadian broadcaster and former Senator Laurier Lapierre has died at the age of 83. Lapierre is best known as co-host of the CBC current affairs program This Hour Has 7 Days in the 1960s. He was appointed a Liberal senator in 2001 and made a run for federal politics as an NDP candidate in 1968. Lapierre was Canada's first openly gay senator, an advocate for gay and lesbian rights. Laurier Lapierre was 83. New record set on the weekend for the biggest movie opening ever in December. The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, earned an unexpected $84.8 million across North America. The film cost more than $200 million to produce and beat out each of the movies in the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the opening weekend. The last movie to hold the December record was I Am Legend, which brought in $77.2 million 5 years ago. In London last night, the Duchess of Cambridge made her first public appearance since she was hospitalized for acute morning sickness. She was a presenter at the BBC Sports Personality of the Year Awards, and the first signs of a baby bump may be evident as the Duchess was chatting with the award winners backstage. The palace confirms that Kate is in her first trimester with a future king or queen due in late spring. Well, Korean sensation Psy had Toronto rocking on the weekend to his viral song, Gangnam Style. You may have heard it.
What is it? Oppan Gangnam Style.
Psy had everybody out of their seats at halftime during the NFL Bills-Seahawks game. Once a year, the Bills play a game in Toronto, and this was it. Buffalo's cheerleaders even took part. Hundreds of others were on the field going Gangnam Style. Of course, the song went viral after it was posted on YouTube in July. Since then, it has had more than 970 million views. And you may feel like you've sat through every one of them. The release of the Opal Inquiry report today coincides with International Day to End Violence Against Sex Trade Workers. Sex workers and their supporters gathered this afternoon on the steps of the legislature to walk in the Red Umbrella March. The Red Umbrella is recognized as a symbol for sex workers' rights. After lighting candles, the group hit the streets for a march in downtown Victoria. Critics of the inquiry say the Opal report marks the beginning of a long road ahead.
I don't think it creates a sense of finality as much as it creates a starting point. I mean, the whole process of the inquiry was fairly flawed to begin with, and it's coming out, and there have been recommendations made and stuff put into place. I would like to sort of take a wait and see stance on it and see what effect it actually has on the people that we work with.
Similar Red Umbrella marches were held all over the world today. The Victoria Rally was organized by the Piers Victoria Resource Society. RCMP and Port Alberni are asking for your help tonight. They're trying to find the people who are responsible for a rash of vandalism. Somebody slashed 22 tires on Friday night. All of the vehicles were parked between 9th and 10th Avenue in the Butte Street neighborhood in Port Alberni. Witnesses saw 3 people in the area, thought to be teenagers, and police would like to speak to them.
One of the parties were crouched down by a vehicle that was actually damaged and did have the tire slashed. At that time, police were not notified, and we are definitely encouraging people and seeking assistance from the public to get additional information to continue our investigation.
If you know anything about the tire slashings, you're asked to contact Port Alberni RCMP. The number's on your screen, or an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers.